make sure that we got. Just give me here. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mad Mamluks podcast. My name is Sim. Along with me are my co-hosts, a rogues gallery today, Mahin Islam, Sheikh Amr Saeed, and Mort. How's everyone doing? This is so great. Like, I'm hands-free. We got a technician in house. This is awesome. It feels liberating, man. I was like doing this one hand tied behind my back. Yeah. Just a note to the listeners: if you are so inclined, or make sure you hit subscribe and make sure you comment in the sections below and voice all your anger related to the show today, because it's going to be a lively one. We're going to be talking about a lot of spicy things that are happening right now. We just had the mass shooting, right?
Yeah, three of them in the last 8 days.
Yeah.
What was the third one again?
California. Oh. That's already old news. The Garlic Fest.
Oh yeah, the Garlic Fest.
There was Garlic Fest, Mississippi, Texas, and then Dayton.
I always wonder how they select these psychos, select the places they're going to shoot. Like, why would you want to shoot up a Garlic Fest? Like, what did they really do to really upset you that much? I'm not saying that it's horrible no matter where you choose, but it just seems odd that you would select a Garlic Fest to shoot, or a Walmart.
If you were a potential shooter, how would you pick your?
I don't know. I'm just wondering. It just seems like.
I mean, who thinks about that?
I just think about that because my mind is warped, and I end up thinking about these weird things, and I'm just wondering why would anyone select that place?
Did they have any manifesto with the guy? Why he chose that or no?
Yeah, so I read the manifesto.
For the garlic shooter?
No,
that's what I think. Majority of people read. I don't know about the garlic.
No, I read the Garlic Fest guy's like his maniac post, but no, the Walmart shooter, I actually got his manifesto on 8chan before they pulled it down, because 8chan got pulled off of Cloudflare this morning, right? So they no longer want to host them. So right now 8chan is down, so I kind of got it from there, and I read it. It's a 4-page manifesto, and he basically says that I wanted to choose the low-hanging fruit, meaning the easy target.
Well, Walmart. He lived 6 hours away from the Walmart that he targeted.
He was from Dallas, and so he drove about 4 hours to El Paso, and his objective, apparently what he told authorities, was I wanted to kill as many Mexicans as I could.
Yeah, the invaders, as he called them in the manifesto, right?
But the interesting thing that I was, the tweet that Trump sent out, he said hopefully after these two shootings, what was the comment he made? It was really weird. He said after these two shootings that happened, hopefully people will start taking immigration seriously.
Immigration seriously?
Yeah. It was crazy.
It was
really twisted.
he's like, we need to focus on mental health, and perhaps we can. And he's talking about gun, like a background check legislation, and he's like, maybe we can pass that along with tougher immigration reform. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, dude, the guy wanted to kill Mexicans. It wasn't the other way around. Like, immigrants didn't want to kill him. He wanted to kill immigrants. Why do?
That's what I'm saying. It was really twisted, but he's indirectly saying that it's the immigrants' fault. That's the problem.
Well, and that's interesting enough, and I'll tell you why. Because, I talk to a lot of alt-right guys on Discord and Pal Talk, and so today I was talking to these, like, hardcore, like, Trumpanzees. Like, they were just like, yeah, Trump. Oh. Anyway, so they were like, I read the manifesto, and he's like, I agree with it. I don't agree with his choice to kill people, but he's like, fundamentally what he's saying is right. He's saying that these kids are going to lose their jobs to automation. The left wants to bring in immigrants so they can become citizens and then have them vote for them. And that's not necessarily untrue. That's pretty much, anyone who studies democratic policies or the politics, they know that they want, more Hispanic voters, right? So they're saying fundamentally what he was saying was correct, that, if they lose Texas, if it becomes a blue state, they probably won't win any election because it carries a lot of electoral votes. So pretty much the country is going to descend into this extreme left wing, which is kind of very socialist idea type of now. You know what I mean? Yeah. So fundamentally, what he was saying was, if you're a Republican and a right winger, you would agree with what he said. That's what's scary.
Hey, Mort, did you see what he read about the natives? Because people would say, well, white folks, y'all weren't here first, right? And he was like, well, the natives are an example of what happens when you let people just come in. Right?
No, not so much that. He was saying, look what the natives did. They didn't resist as tough as they could, and they got wiped out. And he's like, well, that's going to happen to us if we don't resist now. And he believed that he didn't even really mind have a real beef with like Mexicans. He said, look, the second generation actually gets jobs, they get educated, they do well, but they're an invading force. And he's like, if we don't push them out now, we're going to lose our culture completely. Like, we're just going to have, a very strange guy though. He also he proposed dividing the country into segregated states. So like regions. So like whites would have one portion of the country, blacks would have one, Hispanics would have the other. Just a really strange idea, but
as long as Muslims get one.
As long as Muslims get one.
Well, folks, how's it sound now? Is it still echoing? Some of the guys were saying in the chat that the sound is echoing.
Just to confirm the tweet from earlier, I'm reading the second half of it. Republicans and Democrats must come together and get strong background checks, perhaps marrying this legislation with desperately needed immigration reform. We must have something good come out of these two tragic events.
That's the part that kind of bugged me. We have to have we have to have something good come out of these two tragic events. But he was talking about immigration. I don't know. It kind of threw me off, and I was like, man, there's insincerity written all over this, man.
Well, because what he's saying is the reason why this kid's pissed off is because of immigration policies.
Exactly. That's what bothered me. But it's crazy how we utilize these two.
Let's step back for a moment, though. It's funny because the right wing is jumping on this like, oh, this guy's a Trumpanzee. He's hardcore Trump right wing. Look at this crazy stuff.
You mean the left wing is?
At the same time, but wait a minute. The Dayton, Ohio guy was like an Elizabeth Warren supporter and a self-professed socialist, right? So now the left kind of goes, oh, they're trying to make excuses for that, saying, well, Elizabeth Warren doesn't really encourage violence and things like that. But what we need to realize is that the debate that's happening right now in the country is it's intense. And people on both sides are getting to the point where they're just frustrated.
Yep.
And I think the reason why people are blaming Trump, here's the thing. Do I put a direct blame on Trump? I can't. I believe individuals are responsible for their own actions. But what I do blame Trump for is fueling the fire, right? He should be presidential and look at this and say, hey, look, we have a real problem, a real concern. Both sides are emotional about this. Let's be pragmatic. And I don't feel like he does that. He panders to one side of the argument.
Yeah, and even in the manifesto, he was kind of copy and pasting what Trump was saying anyway, right? So that's why I think, dude, as someone who's a statesman has to have a lot more responsibility. I know everyone is entitled, and everyone has, they're expect to have certain expectations, but when it comes down to it, man, I think me and Sim were talking about this a few months ago. People are always going to be illogical, right? people are always going to be illogical. They're going to do illogical things, even in the smartest of people. But when you have a president that just spews this kind of jargon, and you have people, obviously, people all the way from nationalists to even intelligent people are gonna repeat everything that he says, right? And that's why a lot of this, stuff is happening, right?
Well, is this really a white supremacist issue, or is this a mental health issue? That's the main question. I mean,
I think it's a hybrid of both.
Because now, if you say it's a mental health issue, you're getting blasted by the left wing right now. It's really everyone is wanting to highlight how bad white supremacy is, and I think we're falling into this problem where I think what I see a lot, at least from the Muslim community, is they're doing paybacks. From when Muslims were being called terrorists, when there was a rogue Muslim who went out and did something, and I think it seems like people are just trying to say that, hey, this is not a problem with mental health. This is a problem with white supremacy. And I think that what's getting lost in the discussion is that because people want to settle some scores, they're really blaming something that's.
Can you blame them though?
No. Well, I think blaming is one thing, man. But
can you blame the Muslims who are saying that though?
I can blame them. I'll tell you why. Is because it depends what your paradigm. If your paradigm is just about, it's our turn now. That's never a good recipe, man. That's going to be a recipe for disaster, especially for truth seekers, right? Muslims aren't the people that are supposed to be. Well, they got us, so now we have to get them. No, what's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong, dude.
Yeah. So what I found interesting, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, Sim. Maybe you guys can comment, but I noticed that lately, when these shootings happen, people aren't really concerned too much with the victims.
Yeah.
They're quickly concerned about who the shooter was, what his identity is,
I hope he was
white,
Muslim.
black, what religion he is, and then they take that to use that as political cannon fodder to attack the other side. Yeah. They don't really care about people dying. They don't care that, almost 40 people died over the weekend. They care more about, that guy is right wing, that guy was left wing.
Yeah.
This is what politics is doing, and I feel like we've lost our humanity. Like
we've been desensitized to killing, bro. That's what it is. We've been desensitized.
You know what I'm thinking? But here's the other thing, Sim. What do you think about this?
Yeah.
I'm looking a lot about. You guys can comment too, but a lot about. I saw the documentary. I forgot what it's called on Netflix about Cambridge Analytica. All right. The Hack, I think it was called. And it really blew my mind, dude. It blew my mind because Cambridge Analytica, people think, we don't want our information to be given, but I'm one of the guys that think, so what? I don't really have anything incriminating or anything like that. But it's not that. They're taking your information, your basic information that you have, but you think it's useless. They're building a profile, and they're using that to create targeted ads that you would watch, specifically designed for you, and then they're making you think a certain way. To a degree, it's almost like brainwashing. And then with Google algorithms, you get in this cloud of the stuff you look up, you keep seeing the same material. It's like a revolving door, and you keep seeing all this stuff. And so can you blame them for becoming so emotional and hypersensitive about issues? Like, it's crazy when you think about it. They're literally being manipulated by propaganda.
And that's why it's really scary, man, is because that's why I don't think it's only mental health, right? And I don't think it's only white supremacy. It's about the direction. And a lot of it has to go to, data, the business of data, right? Data is so valuable now, and the amount of money that it's sold for, that people will just be seeing what people will see based on what they've seen in the past, and they're going to continue, and the algorithm is going to guess of what else that is you want to see, and it'll actually, like you said, it'll control your thoughts to a certain degree.
I mean, it's a very scary
it'll make
time
you want
right
to buy
now
something that you probably wouldn't have bought.
Oh, that's
5
why
years
I'm
ago.
getting Pornhub ads popping up on Facebook all the time.
I don't think that's because why. Usually, if Facebook does a search at what you've been already looking for, and you've probably.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So Mahi, just so you know, I know you're not too
in.
tech savvy, but there's something called a browser incognito mode, where it'll just you avoid all that stuff. But anyways, point being is that they're taking information, and I feel like it's crazy because think about that, Sim. Like, let's say Zucky just one day looks up something on, like, he has his own Google account. Let's say you're just browsing certain things, right? People are building a profile on him. What does he watch? What time does he watch? You know, how is he progressing in his age? Like, you know, oh, we've been watching him for 4 years now. What's his what do we anticipate he's going to want to do next? And they can feed advertisements, like, you know, alerts to his inbox or YouTube feeds or whatever it is, and kind of shape his mind so that he thinks the way they wanted him to think. It's insane if you think about it. Like, it's really scary if you think about it.
That is, man. That is, dude. The more I remember once, I think it was like 5 years ago, bro. You put up a post, and maybe on Facebook that the average human sees, I think, is like 6,000 ads a day unwillingly or something like that. Right? All that stuff has an influence, man. Everything you see, man. Yeah. Everything you see has an effect on your mind, body, and soul, man. Everything, even though you think it may be insignificant, right? But yeah, that has a lot to do with, you know, social media anxiety and stuff with people too, and just like anxiety that people are dealing with. There's a whole bunch of information
and I think so. I think to sum it up, these shootings are a combination of legislation, mental health, you know, and issues of, and also a lot of it is conditioning of the mind of this, and what that is using fear tactics, right? Yeah. It's called psyops. And this is something that the government, you know, a lot of the governments, they make it illegal to use. It's considered like a military technique. So psyops is basically, it's like psychological warfare. You know, they very elite, you know, groups in the military use this type of method to extract information and to make assets, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, they're using that specific type of tactic to now target regular civilians, which is, and to be honest, most governments require you have to first get permission from them before resorting to these tactics, right? So media companies are now using psyops to basically influence the way you think. It's crazy.
And I think also there's also an element where people feel like something's being taken away from them, right?
It's fear-mongering, right?
If you tell somebody that someone's here and they're taking things away from you, not only just your land, taking jobs away from you, they're taking things away from you, that's going to cause you to do a lot of irrational stuff, right? A lot of irrational behavior.
More, if you were a Donald Trump and you had one bullet in the chamber, bad analogy probably, but what would you use it on right now? People are saying...
Just saying, you know.
Policy-wise is what I was getting at.
He's being figurative more, not.
What's the one thing he would fix?
Literalist.
One thing that that's a solid.
I'll tell you what. If I was him, I would fix immigration. If he wants to win the next election, he can fix immigration with one shot, and then he'll win that. The next election easily.
Oh, you mean?
I mean, it doesn't matter how, but
I'm talking about like the shooting, the mass shooting issue. What would you do?
That's regarding mass shooting.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think you need to have some level of gun control. Okay, you can't be armed to the teeth. Yeah. I think you can still be pro Second Amendment, which I am. I'm pro amendment. I think most of you guys are as well. I'm not sure if you guys aren't, then let me know. But I feel like you don't need to own an arsenal of weapons. I think a handgun with the limited magazine is perfectly in line with the Second Amendment. Think about the Second Amendment already limits your rights on automatic rifles. You can't buy a rocket launcher, right? That's part of right to bearing arms. Yeah. But so there's already precedent in establishing limitations to the Second Amendment. If you're going to take that step, you might as well make it so that the harm is reduced if there is a mass shooting.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would just ban.
I mean, I agree with you, but so many people are going to be like, "Yo, I would ban assault rifles more." And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I was going to ban assault rifles completely. I mean, look, you can still be a conservative and make the argument for that. And Mahin, you might know this, but Ronald Reagan was in favor of banning assault rifles. He said that, you know what, I can understand why somebody would want to have a handgun, but assault rifles, I don't see a need for. It's not used for protecting yourself or hunting, right? This is used for. I mean, it's not just fun and games, right? These are powerful guns that are made to cause maximum damage, right? And so I think Americans can, there would be a ban on assault rifles. But the problem is it would have to be slowly. Yeah. We have so many guns in this country. Taking 100 million guns is going to be almost, a huge endeavor.
And they're going to say, oh, you're infringing more on our rights. And people, obviously, you're going to get more of a reaction.
Well, that's the thing, the Second Amendment debate.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that's ever going to go away, dude. That's never going to go. It's always going to remain now. It's too late. We're too late in the game now.
It's part of American history.
Yeah,
you can't erase that, right? Yeah. The reason why they were able to put that in the Constitution is so that no one could come in and take them over.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, there's we can do a whole.
We can keep on going. Let's. The purpose of Mad Mondays has always been to interact with our listeners and things like that. And one of our fans or listeners is asking regarding our opinion on the Hajj boycott. Many people are advocating for a Hajj boycott. Is that something that should be advocated or something that should be used as a tool to stop Saudi Arabia from its bombings on Yemen?
I think it's stupid.
I advocate those guys taking an Islam boycott.
Yeah, I mean, it's like doing it like, oh, you know what? I protest the imam, so I'm not going to pray anymore.
The Hajj has been always removed from politics and everything related to that. I don't think you should conflate the two issues regarding any political issue. It's and there has never, and Sheikh Ahmed could clarify, I don't know of any things that would prevent someone from or I don't know of anything in the Sharia that would allow that kind of a reason to not go to Hajj.
Yeah, and it's a very faulty understanding of what a boycott is and who you should apply a boycott to, right? Yeah. It's a very shallow understanding of what a boycott is in Islam, right? You're utilizing a false concept. You're utilizing the concept of boycott on the wrong act of worship.
Yeah,
you don't have. It's
now if the Saudi Arabia government prevented you from going to Hajj because of statements you made regarding statements of protest that you made against their bombing in Yemen or other campaigns. That's not in your control. That's not in your realm of control. Otherwise, I don't see why you would want to do that.
Yeah, man. I'm just other things you go boycott, dude. But why? It doesn't have anything to do with Hajj and Umrah. Keep Hajj and Umrah out of it. It's like one of the few things that we have left that we're doing good as an ummah as of right now. That's like the only institution, if you think about it, that's actually surviving pretty well. Right, but if you have a dilemma, and I get the sentiment, Saudi benefits greatly monetarily from it. I get all of that.
That's been throughout time,
exactly.
Time immemorial.
But you have to remember that it's good to visit the merchants also of Saudi Arabia to increase their wealth, because that's, when that's when they're expecting money, right?
Yeah.
The Hajj season, and when people come from Umrah, obviously.
They're not the oil tycoons, These people are the people who struggle if you don't come and you don't spend your money over there. So
exactly.
I mean, let me give you an example. I mean, the Shiites and the Sunnis have been fighting for a long time. Iran hates Saudi Arabia, but they still send their Iranians over for Umrah and Hajj, right? So if they can get over that, I mean, nobody hates the Saudis more than the Iranians, right? Yeah, and they're willing to let them go. So, just take it as an example.
Folks who are listening in the chat, make sure you send us your questions, thoughts. This is always an interactive discussion that we have with you guys, and this is why we kind of set up Mad Mondays. We haven't been doing it regularly, but we hope to get our bearings in place and make it regular again. And hopefully, if you guys can engage with us, we will be able to engage back with you, I guess.
A lot of stuff happening, man.
I was just thinking about something. So with regard to the boycott, I mean, if you really want to take a stance, you could just go do your Hajj and bounce out real quick and not stay for an extra week or something. I mean, if that's what if you want to do, so they don't make more money. But I don't think you should avoid Hajj completely, right? Yeah. I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
There's much more beneficial things you could do. There's a lot more activism you could do.
That's what I'm saying. The scope is very skewed. It's a false understanding of how the world is working, unfortunately, man.
You're not.
And to be honest, the Saudi government doesn't really make a huge amount of money off you. It's more the vendors that make it. The hotels, the local vendors, the tourist companies. They only charge you a Hajj visa, right? I mean, they're not really making too much money off of you. It's the local economy that makes money off of you.
Yeah, on a governmental level, they're not making, it's peanuts.
Yeah. Now,
it's pennies.
What do you think about boycotting something like Patel Brothers?
Oh, because man.
Speaking of that.
Oh, regarding Kashmir.
Yeah,
Kashmir, just in India, what's happening in India in general, man. But yeah.
Okay, so Kashmir. This is why don't you just start things off and let people have an idea of what's actually happening in Kashmir.
So should we give a brief rundown of because a lot of people don't know. I mean, even people from Indo-Pak backgrounds don't know what's happening in Kashmir. So basically, here's a quick rundown. Okay, 1947, Pakistan and India split. Kashmir was a princely state at one time. It was the only princely state with like a Hindu Maharaja that was ruling over a majority of Muslims. Almost 60% Muslims were there.
In Kashmir,
Pakistan and India began fighting over it because they're like, oh, it's my property, your property. What happened is the Maharaja made a deal. He made a neutral, a neutral zone, and he said, okay, let me buy some time. What happened was the Maharaja then he did a shady move. What he did was he took the weapons from the Muslims who were formerly part of the British army, and he took their weapons and gave them to the Hindu villagers who were part of a defense force. So that made the Muslims a little bit tense, and they started taking. And then what happened was the Maharaja decided to say, you know what? Now we're going to give it to the Hindu villagers, who are a little bit more radical, and they started taking some land. The Pashtuns from northwest frontier province of Pakistan, in retaliation, they moved in to Kashmir without the approval, supposedly, of the Pakistani government, right? So the Maharaja then asked help from India and said, "Hey, help me out, because they're coming in." And then India didn't want to come in because they thought it was a neutral zone, right? They had both agreed. They both signed with the Maharaja. So what they said was, we're only going to help you if you cede Kashmir to the Indians, and then we'll help you then. So what happened was they actually did that. The RSS party in India and the Maharaja created a campaign to take control of Kashmir, and that they massacred anywhere between 20,000 to over 100,000 were killed in that massacre. Okay, so naturally Pakistan they wanted to push back because they didn't recognize the legitimacy of that. They said, listen, we signed an agreement and it was agreed on both parties that it would be a neutral zone. So they pushed back with their army, right? So the Maharaja left an area called Srinagar, which is like the main area where his kingdom was. Okay, but so the Pakistani army, what happened after the Pashtuns came in, the Indian army sent an air convoy. They drop shipped them over there, and they couldn't deal with the terrain. And then Pakistani basically pushed their army in at the same time, and it caused them to retreat. And they wanted the UN to arbitrate. The UN arbitrates, and then they say, hey, if you withdraw all your troops, we'll let the people decide what they want to do, right? None of the guys withdraw their troops. Pakistan and India are still there. So they ended up saying in 1949, we're going to make a ceasefire, and we're going to make the line of control, which is what you hear about today, the line of control. That's basically a de facto border splitting Kashmir in two. One is Jammu and one is Azad Kashmir. Azad is in Pakistan and Jammu is in India side, okay? Then what happens is there's a ceasefire, and now there's skirmishes that are happening, and then it kind of settles down a little bit. Then in 1962, the Chinese come in on the Indian side of Kashmir, and they stole Aksai Chin, which is like the area. They just occupied it. They took it over. So India doesn't do anything. But during that time, since India doesn't do anything, Pakistan thinks, hey, you know what?
Well,
China did it.
They fought over it. Well, more they did fight over it, and China won that war, basically.
There was 3 wars altogether, right?
Yeah.
In Kashmir,
It wasn't even, the Himalayan soldiers that were stationed there, they were nothing compared to the Chinese army.
Right.
It wasn't even like they fought very hard for it. They just overran those people, and India didn't really retaliate much against that. They just kind of gave it. It was a small portion of it next to the glaciers. But Pakistan took it as a sign that, hey, India is getting weak, so let's go in, right? So they crossed over, because keep in mind, the Muslim majority was feeling backlash under the Hindus that were controlling them. So there was always skirmishes going on. So Pakistan decided to go in and say, with the help of these local, Muslims who were trying to fight for their freedom, they crossed in, and the ceasefire broke, and then they started fighting. But then it ended up being like, they had to go back. Both sides retreated to the original lines before the whole 65 thing. Then you have that whole thing in 1971 where East Pakistan, now known as Bangladesh, splits out, right? India helps Bangladesh separate from Pakistan. No longer East Pakistan, it becomes Bangladesh. Then for a while, it's kind of calm. And in the 80s, you see a Muslim population rise because there's more and more oppression on the Muslims. They're silencing them, they're raping their women, people are disappearing. So they're rising up, right? And then this kind of builds tension, a lot of tension. India starts deploying heavy amount of soldiers to this Jammu Kashmir area. Then in 1999, things escalate between Pakistan and India in the Kargil region. I think it's called Kargil region in that area. But this is a very unique time because Pakistan and India both now have nukes in 1999, right? They both became a nuclear country. but somehow they were able to broker through the UN. They were able to broker a peace deal, okay, to de-escalate. Everything's kind of going. We have skirmishes back and forth, more and more oppressions happening to the Muslims. And then now you fast forward to 2008, where India says in Mumbai, Laksha Taiba, which is a free movement in Kashmir, bombs the Mumbai capital, right? So now the tensions rise even more. And India begins talking about annexing Kashmir entirely and saying, taking away the autonomous state and saying, we're going to just take the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's building fear among the Kashmiris. Why? Because Kashmiris, that's a nightmare for them. The Muslim majority in Jammu, the last thing they want is the Hindu majority over them that has full rights over them, right? Because they're already being killed. That means an ethnic cleansing is going to happen. They're going to shift. They're going to try to change the ethnic landscape of Kashmir by bringing more Hindus in, right? So they don't want that to happen at all. So this builds into something that happened, a very important moment, which happened in our present time in 2016 with an activist named Burhan Wani. Burhan Wani is an activist and also a young freedom fighter, and he used to have clashes with these Indian army personnel that were there, and he ends up being killed. And by the way, just so you know, around this time there are 600,000 Indian soldiers in Jammu Kashmir right now. Yeah. Imagine that number, 600,000. That's way more than the population of people. That means there's like 4 soldiers for every single one person in Jammu Kashmir. Yep. Okay,
and just some more deployed recently too. Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah, if you think about the number, the sheer number, insane. That's 500,000, a little over 500,000 soldiers. It's one of the most militarized zones in the world. So this person, Burhan Wani, passes away. I mean, it dies as a martyr. And so massive protests are starting to happen. And then at the same time is when you have Modi also in power. And Modi is what? From the BJP. He has a history of trying to downplay violence against Muslims, right? And he's pushing this whole thing about, annexing Kashmir and taking it back and removing the autonomous status. And he also has an election coming up, right? So he wants to get, and this is a big talking point for them. So what happens is he's pushing this, and it never really went through. But then recently in Punjab in 2018, they made the claim that somehow Pakistan attacked an air base in Punjab. Pakistan denies it. Terrorist groups deny it. They say we didn't have no part in it. And then this is the recent one where you find India actually launching attacks into Pakistan, supposedly targeting specific training grounds for terrorists. And then in the meantime, this is when Pakistan shot down the Indian aircraft. Remember that video about showing that pilot they treated humanely and returned him back to India? Mm-hmm. That's that whole thing. But now, for this new election coming up for Modi, his big thing is, for sure, now we're going to take away, we're going to completely take away the autonomous status of Kashmir, and we're going to own the whole thing. And now the Kashmiris are frightened because, like I said, this is their worst nightmare. That right now, that means if they annex it, it is for sure going to be ethnic cleansing.
And he knows this is going to cause war. He knows this for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's disputed territory, and he knows they're going to have to kill Muslims that are living there, ethnic Kashmiris, and replace them with Hindus who come from other parts of India.
Yeah. And a lot of true colors are being shown now too on different political parties, and he's been using this over and over. The thing that really angered me about Imran Khan is when he mentioned when Modi came into power, and even recently, tweeting about Modi and how he's a civil person, he's a perfect person he's literally showing the world that he paved the way for Modi now, so the Pakistanis can at least be distracted by their leader saying that this is okay about whatever Modi's going to do, right? So that's why I think a lot of Muslims are angry with him too, with Imran Khan, is because he's legitimizing this force. And the second thing, before you start, he's legitimizing something that the subservient one now is going to be Pakistan over India, because India is going to climbing up and has been being an economic superpower, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, I think we want to discuss a lot of things that are happening between the lines there too.
This is a great exercise.
I mention one thing before we continue. I think it's really important to the discussion. Just so you guys know.
Yeah.
In the beginning of this whole conflict, it was always supposed to be the decision of Kashmiris to decide which country they want to be part of.
Yeah.
Right. And according to a recent think tank, over 50%, more than 50%, almost 60% of Kashmiris today want to be independent of both Pakistan and India.
And wasn't that even kind of the goal of the Maharaja that was there, the Hindu Maharaja? I forgot his name. Hari something. Hari.
Yeah, Hari something.
I forgot
his name, but
he kind of he intended for Muslims to some degree. Some people say, I was reading a few conflicting, passages on this, but he actually wanted to respect the Muslims and kind of keep Muslims, and he actually felt bad for them to a certain degree, but he knew what was inevitable. And obviously because of Britain was facing a lot of issues because of all the skirmishes and the fighting that was happening. And some people actually believe intentionally Britain knew this was going to happen to constantly cause this low-hanging fruit problem between India and Pakistan.
This is an excellent exercise. I mean, as tragic as it is, it's a great way for us to learn how to do a political analysis.
Yeah.
Now, what we do is we have to understand how the colonial powers create these conflict zones. We don't see any conflict between America and Canada because there is no conflict zone, right? Canadians are wimps anyway. Sorry. No offense.
I got dual.
But let's just say there is no conflict zone. Where there is a conflict zone, what happens? There's a problem happens, right? Where in the Western Hemisphere was there a conflict zone that had the United States worried about? Just off the top of your heads, someone shout it out.
Iraq, Iran?
Well, before that.
In the Western world.
In the Western world.
Oh, the Western world.
Think the Caribbean. Cuba. So who utilized Cuba during the Red Scare? The Russians, the USSR,
bases
right?
were there. Yeah.
The USSR. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is why it's so important for colonial powers not to have conflict zones within their regions. So I wanted I think was it Franklin Delano Roosevelt or Woodrow Wilson? Someone said you can no country from the eastern part of the world can interfere in the western part of the world because they thought the western part of the world, North America, South America, is their sphere of control. No one has. Never mind, the USSR didn't care about that, and they eventually sent a lot of communist agents over there to spread communism throughout South America. But what we understand now is, first, in the past few episodes, and actually in the larger context of the Mad Mamluks, we've always been talking about self-interest, right? How capitalism utilizes self-interest to further their gains, and what we need to do with regards to this situation is figure out who the parties are and who benefits from the situation, right? Right now we have Pakistan, right? And we have India, and we have Kashmir, and we have to utilize, who's in what situation? Right now we have Pakistan, who is in a very horrible economic situation. They're asking for bailouts from multiple organizations around the world, the World Bank, IMF. They got a bailout from Saudi Arabia, China, billions and billions. What are they preparing for? Imran Khan promised to set up this welfare state, and he is trying to garner all the resources he can while putting his country into an incredible amount of debt. But this is an election promise that he's trying to put forward, and he's going to try to deliver on that promise, it seems like, at least from all the requests he's doing.
No, before you continue, because you're on an awesome roll right now. Now, the fact that he's being super nice and paving the way for Modi, what is he gaining out of that right now, as we speak right now?
So we have to understand.
Is it because he doesn't want any problems in the future?
Well, what Modi right now is, so you have to understand the relationship between Pakistan and India. India's not in a bad situation right now. They're not. They're not in good situation, but they're just not in a bad situation. And we have to see how dependent India is on the resources that Kashmir provides. They have all these glaciers that provide water, energy. They have a lot of energy that's generated from the streaming water from these glaciers up towards the north. So India is very dependent on the energy that's coming from Kashmir. So see where I'm getting here? It's not going to lead to a very happy ending, folks. I'm really sorry to tell you, if you are Imran Khan fans, he's really not going to help you out in this one.
I think here's what people need to realize, and this is putting aside religion and bias. Both countries are using Kashmir as a negotiating tool, right? It's a tool that they use. It's a proxy war, but it's a political thing. It's sad to say this, but Pakistan, as a government, doesn't really care much about Kashmir in terms of the Kashmiri people, right? It's more about confronting showing a posturing of political positions against India, and likewise with India.
Right.
The idea is that Imran Khan is also in a very tough situation where he's trying to rebuild Pakistan, and and that's why you see him coming to meet Donald Trump in the White House, right? And he's even saying to Donald Trump, "Hey, maybe you can help us with this Kashmir
exactly
issue."
They met
right?
a couple weeks ago. I want to say, what was it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe? I can't remember the exact date, but they both met. Modi and Imran Khan met. They both want a resolution for this, while it makes them both look good at the same time. This is not something that Imran Khan and Modi are like, oh, I don't like you and I don't like you. They're all working together and advancing their interests with the green light of the United States behind them. No, very unlikely, extremely unlikely, less than 1% chance this will go to some kind of conflict where there's going to be war and stuff like that. Get that out of your mind. These countries are
not war between countries, but it's going to be civil war amongst the people, right?
There may be a regional conflict within Kashmir and stuff, and there'll be a terrible loss of life, tragic.
Not country against country, though.
Well, just so you guys know, up till now, the whole conflict, the death count is about 50,000 people so far. Right, so from 1947 to
and mainly civilians. They're basically all civilians.
These are civilian deaths.
Yeah.
But also keep in mind now, let's try to be a little bit analytical here and biased. India is also getting worried. Why? Because Pakistan is making relationships. As Sim mentioned, they're trying to amass this wealth in order to create a welfare state, right? To implement social welfare programs, right? To help the citizens come up. Imran Khan's idea is that we can give them a boost, and from there we can jumpstart the economy and start with education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, what that also means is right now, Pakistan in itself as a country is in a very strategic point. In Balochistan, there's an area called Gwadar Port, and that's a very strategic port in that region, very close to Iran. And recently, Saudi Arabia, China, and Pakistan signed an agreement, and they've created a free zone in that port, and they're developing that. And what that means is you can pretty much export anything you want into that free zone without paying any taxes. You can literally buy and sell like they have in Dubai and Oman and places like that, right? So that makes it a very hot spot for business in that region, and India doesn't like that. Why? Because it takes the light away. India is trying to get a lot of the business from China, because China knows that sanctions are coming on them. America doesn't like what they see as unfair business practices by China, and a lot of businesses are moving out. Like some businesses have moved out of China now in light of these new trade wars. They've gone to Vietnam, and some places have gone to India and the Philippines, right? So they're trying to absorb that business. But if they're creating a free zone with China can get around that by opening companies in Pakistan in a free zone, and they won't be hit by sanctions, right? So essentially, this is also worrying India, because India is an emerging country. Absolutely, it's much larger than Pakistan, but they have a lot more to worry about because of the sheer population size they have, right? They're trying to come up, but they're always 10 steps behind China, even though they're the same size, but they haven't been able to catch up.
Right.
And so India's in a tough position.
Hey, Mort, can you explain what this Article 370 is? That seems to be the revocation of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked
that's
about
the law that was in place by a. Sorry, Morton. Did you want something? I can talk about it if you want.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So Article 370 was part of a legal document that was created by a third party institution. I'm not sure what's the term for it, but a third party body that was separate from the Indian government, that was kind of laid out how the Indian government will designate Kashmir and how it will deal with them, and it was basically illustrating them as an autonomous body that will have its own regional government and will perform the things that the local population would want them to instate. And what they did was, last year the Indian government said, the Indian Supreme Court said that Article 371 is now part of the Constitution, because that body does not exist anymore. And so that
would mean Kashmir is India's now.
No.
No.
They said that they are challenging the validity of Modi saying that Kashmir is part of them. The Indian Supreme Court. Indian Supreme Court is saying that body doesn't exist anymore. Whatever laws that were enacted or whatever rules and regulations related to how Kashmir will be governed will stay in place the way it has always been.
Okay.
And that's part of the constitution. And they said Modi can't change that.
Right. So Sim,
Modi's ignoring it now, and he said we're repealing all that.
Yeah.
Right. So Sim, just to simplify even more, all Article 370 is basically saying that Kashmir is an autonomous region, right? It is not under Indian rule, right? So it has its own laws and own rules depending on because it's an autonomous state. So that's why it's such a big issue. Because if you don't respect that, if Modi doesn't respect that, then that means he can claim it for himself, for India, right? As being the prime minister. And so the Congress, as he mentioned, Parliament is trying to make that part of the Constitution, saying, no, we must respect the agreement that we had with the locals and the agreement within Kashmir, because it's not just taking land, it's also keeping the peace with our neighbors.
And that's why today, I think after that was released, people are so grievous now because they don't know what's in the future.
Now
they don't know what's going to happen.
There's also many different clauses within this Article 370 that doesn't allow Indians to buy land in Kashmir. But now with the repeal of this, it will allow Indian citizens to start purchasing property in Kashmir, and eventually, what do you think?
Sounds like settlements.
Sounds like settlements, right?
Exactly.
Well, so what that means?
Where are they getting the script from? Their cozy relationship with Israel.
Yeah.
So this is how
ethnic cleansing. It's a precursor to ethnic cleansing.
Yep.
And that's he's not afraid of mentioning that, even whether it's behind closed doors or the BJP party. They know that they've always, even when I was there, man, I personally heard people and Hindus that were on, they were like rioting in some areas. It's always been said Muslims are a plague and we can't wait for them to leave. They're a plague, and that's what it is. And
hey, Amar, when you were in studying in India in Lucknow, did you feel any of that? Did you see any of that stuff?
So funny, dude. Me, Irfan, and Haqqani, when we were in a restaurant once, right? And it was I can't remember which political party it was, but it was a little faint. It was Valentine's Day. And they were protesting Valentine's Day because they didn't want any Western ideas and Western holidays in India. And remember, North India is very religious. Very,
were they like Salafi Hindus?
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, I still love my Salafi brothers. I'm not comparing.
No, I mean like the Salafi version of the Hindus, right?
I'm not even going to say that, bro.
They don't want Western
what I have in my heart right now for what's happening in India, bro, I ain't even going to make that comparison. But, so I go to the bathroom while we're waiting for our food, and Irfan and Khani are waiting at the table, and all of a sudden I hear all this chanting and yelling and screaming inside of the restaurant. I walk inside, and I'm wearing this white thobe. I open the door, and all of a sudden everything goes quiet because there's movement in the restaurant, right? And all of a sudden the door opens, and it was kind of loud, the door. And I open the door, and everything is quiet. I'm like looking at them, they're looking at me, everyone's looking around at each other. We're like, uh-oh, what's about to happen here? And then they just started yelling at like the owner or the waiters that were at the restaurant, saying, you better not be celebrating Valentine's Day because it's Western and we don't take that here, and we're Indian nationalists and stuff like that. I can't remember the name, which group it was.
You should have screamed Happy Valentine's Day.
Is it the Hindutva group?
No. I think it was Shiv Sena.
RSS
Maybe
or
Shiv Sena, or RSS or Shiv Sena. I can't remember.
Okay.
One of those two. But I've seen BJP rallies and stuff like that before, and it gets pretty crazy, man. Because at the end, there's no rules. Anyone can do whatever they want.
I mean, look. The situation in India is so scary that the Muslims are voting for the party that will be the BJP party, which is equivalent to the Republicans, I guess, in the U.S. I mean, they're hardcore Republicans.
It's not even that simple.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean.
Ultra-nationalists, let's just say.
Imagine how, this is a little emotional for me, but imagine how scared Muslims are there now. They know that Modi and BJP are out to slaughter them, but they're so scared and so weak, they're voting for them, hoping nothing's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
Like they have no other choice.
Here's people need to understand this.
Well, they have a choice.
No, they have a choice,
violence,
but they're so weak. Their mindset is so weak. and they know that no one's going to be there to defend them. You know that they have no help. There's no power that's there to help them. They know that it's like begging the person that's about to slaughter you. Like, just don't slaughter me. That's what it is. And we're going to vote for you. And Modi knows it's going to happen. He's still going to slaughter them. He knows, you know.
Yeah.
And
So just so you know,
he knows what's going to happen. And whatever people think that they're going to be able to stop what's going to happen, dude, it's the inevitable. It's going to happen. And all the Muslim leaders, right? Pardon me for my tangent. They're all just going to watch everything that's happening.
Yeah, Imran Khan's not going to do anything. No country in the world is going to move an inch when this slaughter starts, and that's the sad part about this whole thing.
So the biggest thing is that people need to understand as well too is that in India, the government largely in these cases turns a blind eye to communal violence, right? Like there will be people who will get beat up in the street on video. You'll see them getting beat up and punched and making people like you've seen people, where they forced a man to beat his wife on camera, and they have these videos. They surface. They're all over. But the government refuses to get involved and prosecute. They're intentionally turning a blind eye, and they want to put fear into the Muslims. So, and also you have to remember, when it comes to voting season, two things to remember. There are a lot of landowners, and some of these Muslims are poor, and they live on farms where they work for the landowners, and landowners basically decide who you vote for. So if you don't vote for who they tell you to vote for, you're in trouble. You pretty much, it's like modern day slavery, right? It happens. They're peasants, right? And then you have other parties. And another aspect is where you have goons of the party, like pretty much like enforcers that go around town to town, and either they pay you to vote, or they say you better vote, or we're going to kill you. You have to vote for our party, and like they'll take a little thumb, the imprint, and that's how they vote. Like they'll put it on the thing and say, okay, they voted. Right? I mean, they don't have a choice sometimes. And unfortunately, this happens in Pakistan too. There are a lot of people who go around where they're forced to vote for a particular party, right? So these Muslims, they're not really voting because they're hoping maybe that, not in all cases where they're hoping that they'll be shown mercy. In a lot of cases, they're just forced to vote, like they have to.
All right. So, in summary, dark times ahead. Really, really tragic. Our hearts go out to them. We have to, continue to make dua. And I mean, there's not a whole lot of, encouragement I can give. Unfortunately, until we have a political body that is, whose interest is the protection.
There's
and
a rally tomorrow,
for Muslims. Well, what are you going to do with the rally? I mean, that's great that people want to rally and they want to feel like they're part of something. But political actors move irrespective of emotional sentiments, this is not.
I mean, unless you're looking for a chick, go to the molecular level. Girl, that'll be good for that. But other than that, the rally is not really going to do anything.
Yeah. All right. What else is on our agenda?
Sim, hold on, wait a minute. Let's just kind of segue into something a little bit lighter here. You're like an internet sensation now, dude. Weren't you on the Daniel show? Weren't you over there? Like,
dude,
I saw your episodes. How did that go?
I love that podcast, bro.
It was great, man. I loved it.
You said something before the show about like some of the listeners got back to you after.
So no, I mean there was generally positive feedback. There was a lot. Some of the listeners were like, you know what, I think. You might burn relationships with people in
because you're on with Daniel.
No, yeah, I mean it's not just that, but like
I love him, bro.
Yeah, talking about some of the more popular scholars in America, you might now. This is what I always told you guys is from the day one that I love all these brothers from bottom of my heart. If I meet any of them in real life, I would hug them if they want to hug me back after that episode. But I'm just saying, I have nothing but love for everyone. Now, if they don't like me I'm not.
No, you made it clear, dude. You want it. You should be able to be a little critical of what people are doing.
Yeah.
Of what's happening in the world right now. There's nothing wrong with that.
And to be honest, most of these issues are not related to Islam. They're related to things that are politically motivated.
They're strategic decisions. We're not questioning anyone's sincerity. We're not, we're just saying, hey, you're kind of going in the wrong lane. Here's a little honk. Come back in the right lane. This is not the territory we Muslims should be in, especially after the horrible things that they've done in regards to Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, and all the horrible things that American foreign policy has been doing around the Muslim world, our scholars should not be there. And I can't ever gloss that over. I can't gloss over that. If something is done in regards to the political world with regards to our scholars engaging in that, I can't turn a blind eye to it. And I just said what I had to say in.
Dude, you're just speaking your mind. Dude, you were so respectful. I don't think anyone's gonna take offense to that. You didn't burn any bridges, and dude.
Well, it sucks for me because I know a lot of you guys have personal relationships with many of these scholars, and I don't want to be that person who causes some kind of rift between
but we
you
just
guys
set the
and
record
them.
straight, dude. Everyone has their own mind. This is where I agree with you, Mort.
Yeah.
Right? Sim has his own mind. He could say whatever you want to say. And as believers, dude, we should be able to criticize each other without getting our feelings hurt.
And generally, I don't like you guys to be part of those podcasts as well. I know, like,
Daniel didn't invite us.
No, he did want you guys on to be on another episode.
We would just ruin it for him, though. That was too intellectual for us.
He'll get more trouble than
I think you guys just being on there would have made me not want to say more because I don't want you guys.
Good. The one-on-one
I think he's saying if Sheikh Amr was there, he wouldn't want to do it. Is what he's trying to say.
No, I wouldn't even know what to say.
Mine or nobody's.
No, look, I wouldn't even know what to say. That's not even.
A lot of times, there's nothing. I mean, look, Sheikh Amr studied with a lot of these brothers. Maheen. All you guys hang out with these brothers on a regular basis, and this is why even when I met these brothers, I'm just like, hey, really respectful and everything, but I don't want to become friends because of the relationship that they're approaching. That I've seen it from a long time, and I didn't want to comment on it. And I feel like the trajectory where Muslim scholarship is going in this country really needs to be talked about. And if we're not going to be talking about it, then we're just part of the problem? Then I feel like quietism, the attitude that we all need to be non-confrontational. We don't talk about problems within the community in public. This kind of attitude has increased them in their boldness in their various engagements within the political world. Let's just put it there.
Let me ask you a question. You posed this question in the previous discussion because I by the way, it's funny you mentioned the whole thing about what people would think. Like if I listened to the episode like 3 times, they aired a couple times after, right? Just to make sure I was picking everything up.
Yeah.
Because when I looked at it from stepping back, I was like, a lot of people are going to interpret this as, Sim got tied up in the Daniel issue with Yaqeen and Sheikh Omar, right? And people have always, I think you always said like on our Twitter that opinions of Sim or Maheen or Sheikh Amr don't represent Mad Mamluks as an organization, right? Yeah. But people that's still the thing, and because it goes up on our channel, that's still like the thing that I'm sure we haven't heard the last of that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I'll be going to ISNA in a few weeks, I think. So I'm sure I'll see some of these guys there. They definitely have a tab on these kind of things. Yeah. I'll say that. But as far as the question I was going to ask is, earlier you said like, who's got an agenda in this? Like have we ever asked ourselves, does Daniel Hakikatu have an agenda in what he writes as far as putting out stuff on Yaqeen or Omar Suleiman or Sheikh Hamza Yusuf?
I think it would be much more conducive for Daniel, the Mad Mamluks, and everyone else to be left-winged in general. If we want an agenda, if we want audiences, we want people to notice us. And I think it would be so much more easier that we just talk about the terminology that the left uses and go along with that march.
Of course,
I'm thinking about a different route. So obviously, you asked him the question about why there was a separation between him and Yaqeen, right?
Yeah.
It's been like 2 years, but I think we'd be like a little naive to say that there has to be some kind of personal like situation going on between him.
I think he could have said so much more.
I think he was holding
back. He held back, and I wanted to pry more and try to get more out of him, but I'm like, you know what? Let's just leave it at that.
And
That's what he's more comfortable with.
someone like that who's holding back, you know that it's going to be really uncomfortable for him to talk about.
Well, I think what Mahin is trying to say, though, is that, hey, does Daniel have his own agenda too? And I think the answer is yes.
I think everybody does, right?
I mean, everybody has their agenda.
You should have an agenda.
Right? He has a certain
our agenda is the advancement of Islam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying whatever it is. I mean, I think all these people are looking to advance Islam. I'm not going to deny that from them, but they all have their own approach and their methodology and how they want to do it. They all have their idea of what is the right way and what's relatable to their audience. And I think that, I mean, he feels it's one way, and he really perceives the left as a threat, and he's trying to, in his mind, center the conversation, and that's what he believes.
Yeah. And by no means is somebody who's actually going to be as sincere as possible. Actually, I shouldn't say sincere. Let me backtrack. Someone who let's just look at the Mad Mamluks. We're not going to say, "Hey, everybody's right, everything is fine." People are not going to. They're not going to take that from us, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah,
is because we want to seek out the truth. And whatever we think is in line with the Quran and Sunnah, and what we can extrapolate from that, of what we see in contemporary times, and we're going to put our own voice in it to promote Islam, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
We're not going to say everything is right, and everything is right, and that's it. Everyone's going to hold hands and kumbaya. We're not going to do that,
right? But okay,
because that's not what real Islam is asking you to do.
I'll tell you where some of the pushback's going to come from. This is what I think, at least. So, because I went back and listened to our episode with Sheikh Omar Suleiman was like 2 years ago, just to kind of understand. Because I was like, I haven't heard him in so long. I wanted to really recalibrate where he's coming from. And I know we talked about, we got an insight into his mindset there. But back to Daniel, I think the question you asked originally was about, like, he was the executive director.
Yeah.
Now that's automatically assumed as like he's the second in command. So there's this kind of. Now, in reality, when I went back and looked at his old bio that we posted, he was a director of Islam and Scientism, and Yaqeen has like multiple directors in their position. It's a
I changed that, by the way. I changed that bio because he told me to change it.
Okay.
I had it originally as executive director.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah, he told me to change it. Like, hey, there's some things happening.
Yeah, because
I can't talk about it, but
I remember because like when we were doing our show, we had met Junaid from Yaqeen a year ago at Isnan, and we had talked about it, like that was the COO was the first official role that was second in command because that's kind of where. So what I'm saying is I feel like people like they at some point in time there has to be a conversation with the Yaqeen guys, whether we talk to them in advance because we are only hearing one side of the story right now, right?
And they're welcome to come on. It's always an opening.
I don't think it's necessarily because a lot of people won't talk about it on a podcast, but I think there's sometimes do you
think they're going to come on and talk about it?
Of course not. Like knowing Sheikh Omar, like because I've known Sheikh Omar for like I don't know, like almost 10 years now, right? Yeah. He's the kind of guy, and he's not going to respond to everything, right? He just doesn't have time for it. Right. And he like kind of is like, well, if we just ignore it for a while, it'll kind of like dissipate, right? That's going to be the approach. But I think if what we could have done differently is, and I know you guys weren't planning on talking about it because you could tell by the tone of the show, we could have probably talk to Yaqeen in advance and be like, hey, what's the real story kind of deal?
No. It's always an open floor. Hey, you want to come on? It's not like
I agree with Sim. If they want to come on and talk about their story, come on. I mean, no one's stopping you. It's an open platform. You want to talk about it? Let's talk about it.
This is a free medium of open conversation.
Yeah, I don't even think that conversation was even trying to decipher who's right and wrong type thing. It's just telling us what happened, right? It's not really like we're not trying to say.
He made the most important point in all this, dude. I think he made an amazing point. People forget this in there. I think Daniel highlighted it too. Is that focus on the issues, not how you feel about what he's saying.
Exactly.
Look at the content. What is the message? Is that message wrong? Forget about your feeling. I get it. People are sensitive today, and it may not be the nice way of saying it. But look at the message. Is what he's saying at the core, is that wrong or right? Measure that against your own understanding.
Which in this context, I think, because I think the backdrop for that part was Daniel's article talking about like the scholar Sheikh Hamza and then Sheikh Omar. Right. He didn't really talk about now. Because
I saw that as him kind of
inviting it.
Yeah, inviting that kind of dialogue. Because if he didn't talk about it on his page, I wouldn't have brought it up. So I just saw his recent post, a couple posts back, maybe a couple weeks ago, where he talked about his fallout with Yaqeen, just a couple blurbs about it. And I thought maybe, this may be a way to open up conversation around that. And so I just took the leap and said, hey, what's happening?
There is the thing about...
So, Sim, let me ask you a question, though. Let me ask you, all three of you guys a question. You guys talk to him probably more than I have, right? I've talked to him a few times here and there. But from when I met the guy, dude, he's such a nice guy. Like, I don't feel he does anything like out of to intentionally harm somebody. I mean, I don't think he has an evil desire to do that. I think he's talking about issues that matter to him, right? That he feels he has to highlight.
Well, it certainly bothers some people, and let's just not. I'm not going to gloss over that. It bothers people, and
that's just the way he put it out. I'm not saying it, but do you think it's his intention to be like this wrecking ball?
Do you think he thinks himself as a provocateur? No, he's not at all. I don't think he's being like an he ends up provoking a certain type of people because he talks about certain things. He talks about the root causes of issues that people don't like to hear because, it makes them feel uncomfortable, I think. And sometimes people complain about, I mean, I don't know him as well as you guys do, but people complain and say, oh my God, he's so harsh. I don't really see him as that harsh.
I see it as comedy. Honest to God. I see it as comedy.
Yeah, dude.
No. I mean,
I laugh every single time. And guess what? If someone made a parody on him, I would laugh too, because that's what parody is. That's what satire and that like vehicle of writing is. I would laugh. It doesn't necessarily make it true.
Might be offensive to some, but it was funny for us.
Right?
Lines, yeah. For another reason, it was funny for us. Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of like so. Here's where I see where Sim's coming from as far as like trying to be disconnected too, because you don't want to be too friendly with people, right? But I think also when you're friendly with people, you really get to know what they're about. So I think there's assumptions made about. So I wanted to talk because when we talked about Sheikh Omar, you guys remember it was right after the shootings in Dallas.
Yeah.
Remember he spoke in front of Bush and Obama, those guys, and he was talking about he wouldn't release the speech. So I think we look at people's track record, right? I'm not sure that we did, like, I wish there was a little bit more pushback on Sheikh Omar, because I think he's portrayed as being some agent of the left.
No, and I made that clear during the podcast. We're not.
Not his intention, but like his actually.
No, well, he didn't get invited to Congress out of the blue. Like, mashallah, Sheikh Omar, you're doing such a great job in your lecture about Maryam. That I watched. I spent the money with my family. We all went and watched that lecture. He's got some great stuff out there. There's nothing regarding his Islamic education or that I'm really against him. I'm against some of the articles that Yachin put out, but there's some things I disagree with it. But that's fine. That's fine. That's with everything. But regarding him being invited to the Congress, it doesn't happen out of void. Yeah. He's done certain things that made people who have access, who have the ability to invite him to that floor, he's done some actions that made them happy, or made him made himself conducive to that environment. And they said, okay,
Let me ask you a question, dude. Let me ask you a question. Yeah. And this is a general question to all these people here, even listening. Why is it so offensive if you're questioning something that's politically, like a political topic or a social issue that a sheikh might talk about? It has nothing to do with Islam with him. Yeah. This is purely politics, dude. He's functioning as an American Muslim in the society, trying to relate to the society he lives in, politically and socially. I can disagree with that. It has nothing to do with me questioning his Islam.
Well, I think we can disagree with them, but I think it's like, are we putting up, or like, I feel like, are we putting up the wrong argument in the first place? Because I think that's where.
Listen.
Well, Sim's argument is right. Think about this. Do you think do you think that me and Sim could just pop up in the White House and give a speech?
No. Why not Yasser Qadi?
You're right.
No, but
Yasser Qadi has similar, following and has a similar influence in the Muslims in the West.
One thing Sheikh Omar Sheikh Omar has talked about in our show with him was that he's always been someone who participated in issues that weren't necessarily for Muslims. If there was oppression, he's like, his politics, he says, is basically like, I'm against oppression. It's whether it's left or right? Yeah. It's like, if there's someone being oppressed, I'm going to be there. That's how he got.
Well, that's how all Muslims should be.
Yeah, but he's the only one doing it, right?
That's where I had a little discussion with somebody even in our WhatsApp group about this. And look, that's where I kind of draw the line. You can't just be vague about certain things, too. Oppression is one thing, right? But what is the oppression? Does that mean you're going to prop up somebody who is going to support for LGBTQ rights?
He's clearly not saying that. He's talking about what's happening at the border.
Listen. There's many people who are participating in many types of activism. Yeah. But the activism he's chosen to align with is directly, at least right next door to the LGBT, crowd where they're all
a platform with individuals who are being used by the LGBT community to model as a perfect Muslim. You know, they're saying, oh, look at certain individuals, right? Not him himself,
right.
but he's engaging and also giving light and credence to individuals that are closely aligned with LGBTQ groups. And that makes me feel like, well, why are you doing that? If you know this person is, I'm not saying you can't work with them private, but why give a spotlight to individuals who you know are openly calling for that? Like, it makes no sense. Where is your sense of obligation? I get it. You want to be a social justice warrior. You want to go out there and, go to a protest. Fine, great. But I'm saying, do what you want to do on your own time. Don't highlight other people that are making us look like all of us are down with that cause. We're not.
What if somebody replies to you by saying, "Listen, we're not supporting her LGBTQ whatever it is. We're just supporting our sister that's in Congress, and we're just want to empower her."
So let me ask you a question, dude. Let me ask you a question.
No, you can't ask a question with a question.
Hold on 1 second. Let me ask you this.
That goes against the rules, dude. I just asked you a question. Why would you ask me a question?
No, I mean, because you made the point. So let's play the role here. Okay, you made that dumb question. So let me play the role here. Okay,
I just asked you a question. You're gonna ask me a question now.
Wait, listen. Let's say it's a lot of white nationalist groups. They're against Israel, right? They want the destruction. They hate them, right? Can I say I'm going to go to an anti-Israel rally with a white nationalist group because we align on that issue?
Absolutely.
Are you out of your mind? I would be like, you want to? If anybody did that,
I think that's a little different. Morty, look.
Their career would be over.
I'm just
playing with the white nationalists. They're gonna kill everybody. I mean,
no,
are you out of your mind?
I'm just playing the shaitan advocate here because a lot of people say this, right? They say that, look, listen, for instance, Ilhan Omar or whoever else it is, we're not supporting what she supports specifically of what she's doing.
Mashallah.
We're just empowering and supporting our sister that's already in office. She already made it that far. We're just supporting her, right, as a person. And we want her to, even if she's down with the LGBTQ, whatever all that is, right? That shouldn't mean just because we disagree with some things that she does, that doesn't mean we should disregard her altogether.
So I'll tell you this much, Amir. If I was having an
Don't
event,
ask me another question now.
I wouldn't invite Ilhan Omar.
Why is that?
Just because I don't support, I don't want to give her a platform for that. I mean, do I still respect her and support you? Sure, I would.
But bro, we're Muslims. Look how far we already made it, bro. We're in the Congress now. We've already gone this far.
You were in your Congress.
We're here now.
You want to go out and just and like say I mean the kinds of stuff she says, I can't be down with it, bro. Like what she talks about, like more transgender rights. Yeah. We're gonna do all this stuff. Woo, yeah, woo. I mean, get out of here.
Let me explain these.
Sim, what would you say to that?
So I want to talk to more real quick. So like let's talk about let's compare two movements, the BLM movement and the Hotep movement, right? So let's say Sheikh Omar is looking. He has these two options. He has the BLM movement and the Hotep movement to pick from, and he wants to address police brutality.
Right? Why don't you explain? I don't think most people don't know what the Hotep movement is.
Hey, Morty, why don't you explain? The Hotep is basically it's like a Pan-African movement.
Who cares what happens? Do better for yourself. Don't rely on other people. Don't rely on.
It's about empowering individuals.
Self-betterment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just take things in your own matter. Like acknowledge that there are barriers, but then work around it and get around and worry about self-help. Don't worry about the white person. Like don't ask the white man for anything.
Right. It's they're kind of like would be maybe a kind of semblance of a black conservative, or like Dr. Omar Johnson. I think is a well-known Hotep guy, right? So let's say you're Sheikh Omar and you're trying to address the issue of police brutality against black folks, right? You got BLM. I'm sure he knows that BLM has LGBT roots. Like that, everyone knows that, right? When you speak to people who are on the ground in BLM, like actual activists, they know, but they're like, and you talk about Hotep, like I agree with Hotep, but I work with BLM because they're the ones that are more effective because they just have more numbers. Hotep's like a fringe movement.
Yeah.
It's not moving the needle. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the end goal is to move the needle.
So you're saying sacrifice whatever you hold dear for that mass for that mass support, so that you can create some kind of a swell.
But it's not everything. Just to be fair, this is what they say.
So let me comment.
Some people say it's just a few things that we disagree with that person, but that person has so much pull.
We're talking over each other, guys.
Sheikh
Hammer, why don't you go ahead?
1 second, sorry, Morty. I apologize. All right, so it's whatever that person is saying. Let's say they're talking about 10 issues. 2 of them I completely disagree with, but rest of the 8, I can jive with that. And he's already made it that far, so I'm not giving up everything. Only 2 things I completely disagree with, but he's my brother, so I'm going to support him because he's my brother. He's my Muslim brother. I would be very disloyal just because he believes in some things that are wrong. Why would I not support him? What would you say to that, Sim? Morpheus?
Why would I support him?
Why wouldn't you support him for that?
Because he gave up
the two things.
The two things? Well, I mean, what two things is he giving up? Are they related to Islam?
Very nice.
I mean, if it's related to Islam, I can't give up anything. So, I'm sorry for...
But he's already this far. Why should we support him?
So that's where we are in this point in history, that we've taken this pragmatic trajectory where we don't want to have... We want Imran Khan to take care of our brothers and sisters in Kashmir, but we don't want to be... We're saying that we don't want to utilize pragmatism because... Or we want to utilize pragmatic thought.
Yeah.
Because if you think about Imran Khan right now, it does not serve his interest in any way to get into a war with India over Kashmir.
Nope.
Right? If you're going along the lines of pragmatic thought, that's exactly what you do. You focus on what's going on regarding your economy, fix that up, and then maybe down the line you'll maybe throw a sanction.
I'll be honest. If I was Imran Khan, that's what I'd do.
Yeah, I mean,
I would run my country
because you've internalized pragmatic values.
I've got it. Like,
and you've internalized secular liberalism in your mind. That's why you've identified yourself as a Republican. And
so wait.
This is true. He's internalized a lot of the values that these guys have been talking about for a while, and now we wonder why. Why are we in the situation we're in? Because we want the shortcut. We want to connect the dots so that we can reach our destination much more faster. Because the hard route involves actually going and doing the hard work that our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did when he was in Mecca, for years pushing. And
just to highlight what you said, one of the most beautiful things about that podcast, bro, which should be written in gold. People are talking about we need to get justice through a system that we're living in. Yeah. But the seerah of Rasulullah, dude, it was so simple and so profound that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, was he saying, hey, we need to get justice from these people here, or are we bringing justice to this whole Arabian Peninsula and eventually the world? Right. That is such a crucial. If you don't look at the seerah in that sense, everything else that you build upon your seerah is dude, I'm sorry to say this, we're gonna become like hippies. Like, oh, it's all about love. It's all about love. We only have to love. Islam is peace. I'm not saying that's wrong, but that's where your vision of Islam ends.
I laid out the negotiation tactics that the Quraysh used with the Prophet, and we've talked about how the pragmatists would have accepted those offers that the Prophet was given by the Quraysh.
Yes.
You worship your God 1 year, and when we worship our God 1 year, and that would have been perfectly acceptable with many Muslim leaders today.
And even the infamous story about Abu Bakr, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and Banu Shayban.
Yeah.
Right. When they meet the tribe Banu Shayban, Abu Bakr says, and he knows the tribesmen of Banu Shayban, right? Muthanna and Maghluq ibn Amr and Hani, who are the three generals or the three chiefs of Banu Shayban. And when they leave, and this is a beautiful story, you guys should read it. When they leave, and Abu Bakr, he says, Ya Rasulullah, let's just agree with them right now, and they're the most fiercest tribe that we know of. If we get their protection, no one can mess with us. If you just agree with them now on something, we can eventually change what they're going to think. Right? And Rasulullah, he said, no, this deen is only for somebody who takes it as a whole. I'm not going to basically take a small portion of benefit right now, because that's not, forget about benefit in this world. A lot of us want to see what's going to benefit in our world, because we have individual needs and stuff too. But for Rasulullah, it was like, nope, this is not allowed in my deen. I can't do this.
Now, was this in regards to like them, what they wanted to accept only certain terms of Islam?
No, so not about accepting terms of Islam. This was the phase where Rasulullah was seeking out tribes for protection. He was ordered to seek out tribes for protection of the Muslims and Muhammad himself.
Right.
Now, there's something that has to be mentioned here, which is very, very worthy of mentioning. Rasulullah, you were talking about putting in the work. Rasulullah had to put in the work, meaning he has to seek out tribes that are going to protect him and are going to be okay with him being the statesman eventually. Are going to see him as a statesman.
Okay.
That is the summarization of the seerah in Mecca and Medina. In Medina, he's going to be the statesman. That's how it's going to start. In Mecca, he's going to need protection up until then, which is why one of the parts of Am al-Huzn, meaning the year of sorrow, was what happened. Khadija radiallahu anha passed away, Ta'if, and his uncle. Was it just for blood ties? Oh, his uncle passed away? Or was it, my uncle was the source that was protecting me and the believers in our da'wah here. When he dies, I have to seek out some. That's when he started seeking out more people, which means that the Nabi of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is commanded to wait and seek out tribes. Do you know in that season, that was the Hajj season where he met Banu Shayban? Do you know how many tribes that they met? Banu Shayban was a 26th tribe. Every single one of them rejected Abu Bakr and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In that Hajj season, you know, we're in Hajj season now. May Allah accept all of our ibadat. The 26th tribe, Abu Bakr is like, Ya Rasulullah, that's Banu Shayban. And while they're walking to see them, he's having this conversation. This is all documented in the seerah and the hadith. Ya Rasulullah, this is the tribe. Inna azzan Allah biha'ula. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us izzah from these people, no one could ever defeat us. Right? So the reason I'm mentioning all this, Rasulullah was even put in that situation. Imagine the best of all creation has to go and ask people for protection. That's putting in work, dude, right? And that was a summarization of him in Mecca. That's all he was doing in Mecca.
Right.
Was seeking protection. Why? To protect and to start a legion of people in Medina that are going to be able to conduct this da'wah to the rest of the world.
Okay.
That's the summarization of the seerah, bro. And it was, yes, a part of the seerah is that you have to be nice to people, of course. And Islam means peace, yes, at times, of course. And you have to love everybody, yes, of course. But there are times, and when people talk about, they don't talk about what Muhammad's life was in Medina, what he actually went through, how many people he actually had to go to war to. Why were people trying to assassinate him, right? And I'm sorry to go off on this tangent. I know I mentioned that already, but did people not accept Muhammad just because he had nice manners? Like, why were they against him? Was he just calling to good manners and don't worship idols?
He was against their worldview.
He was against their worldview.
Yeah.
Not just that, your worldview is going to be replaced with me as your leader and Allah's message.
Right,
That's
right.
it. Right? And that's something that I think the seerah has to be taught. But anyways, so that brings into that portion. That's why I love that portion of justice that you mentioned, that we didn't go out seeking justice. We brought justice to the world. That was the summarization of Rasulullah seerah as far as justice is concerned. Right? That flips the script. We can't go begging people for justice. We have to say, hey, this is what we have, and this is something that you should accept because it's best for you in this dunya and the akhirah. That's all there is to it.
Many folks would argue that the Treaty of Hudaybiyah is an example of pragmatism. And what would your response be to that?
Very good. So when people say, and I know this, and it's on the face value, it's a very good comment to make and a very good argument, right? That in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, but we have to remember the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was an order from Allah, right? What do I mean by that? In Surah Al-Fath, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, Rasulullah has a dream. And in his dream, he sees that the Muslims are going and they're doing tawaf around the Kaaba, right? Umrah. So he tells the believers, he says, hey, I had a dream that we went for Umrah. And the Sahaba, they got so excited. So excited, they went in their ihram and all of that. And even to the point where they weren't even carrying weapons to show that they're not going to go to war. So even people that were coming from other tribes, they saw them, they'd feel ashamed to fight them because they didn't have any weapons, right? Now fast forward here, that the key and the secret to Surah Al-Fath and the Treaty of Hudaybiyah is Allah didn't tell them when they were going to go to Umrah and go and do tawaf, right? And when Rasulullah didn't agree with the terms, or he agreed with the terms, and the Muslims felt that they were getting the short end of the stick, when Muhammad acts, he acts in wahi. He's not acting on his own behalf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them wait as a test of their patience in a similar way. Like for instance, when Surah Al-Kahf was revealed, right? What did Rasulullah say to the people? He said, I'll have an answer for you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? And the answer didn't come. 15 days later, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals ayat from Surah Al-Kahf, right? So sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he makes them wait, that's a victory on its own. So after everything is finished, in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which is actually a beautiful story and very gut-wrenching in its own way what Rasulullah had to go through. But at the same time, at the end, Umar radiallahu anh, he says, Ya Rasulullah, this treaty that you signed, is this actually a victory? He says, Awa fathun hadha ya Rasulullah? So he said, is this a victory? And Rasulullah said, yes, this is a victory. Right? So the victory was not, and this is where I don't like the argument tree of Hudaybiyah. The victory wasn't in them doing the Umrah. The victory was that Rasulullah agreeing to the terms and Allah ordering him to do so. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah argument, do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Because the Meccans ended up breaking the same terms that they agreed to.
They ended up breaking the treaty.
Yeah.
And that fueled the Muslims even more. It gave them a lot more power. And they understood that, this is actually, Allah knew what was going to happen, which is why He told us to do so. All we had to do was be patient. And imagine what happened. And I'm going to get to what you're talking about. It's a very fine reply to it.
And just before you do, the shock that Umar radiallahu anhu has is what is really glossed over, because this whole time they had uncompromising attitude throughout the whole thing.
Before Islam too.
Yes.
Before Islam, he said, Ya Rasulullah, we wouldn't even unjustly take or give one date to them, and you're telling us to be okay with this treaty. And the only way that the believers felt remorse after this, which is fine, this is Allah doing their adab, right? Showing them adab, is when Rasulullah comes to Salama radiallahu anha, right? And her attention says, you know what? They're not okay with this treaty. They're not listening to what I'm saying. And she says, Ya Rasulullah, they've been through a really difficult time right now. They're very emotional. Why don't you just shave your head and go and sacrifice your animal, and they'll all follow. So the believers, look, when he goes into the tent, next morning they see him. If you look at Tafsir al-Fath, Surah al-Fath, and the hadith that are talking about Surah al-Fath, they said they saw Rasulullah shaving his hair and going to sacrifice their animal, and they said, what did we do? And there's actually narration, it's kind of cute and like beautiful at the same time. They're like, in remorse, they're cutting each other's hair and crying at the same time and hoping Allah's adab doesn't come down on them, right? But what I'm trying to say here is the victory, if you think the victory was doing Umrah that year, then Treaty of Hudaybiyah would be applicable to the argument that you're saying. But we're not saying that. We're saying that whatever Allah decides, that's what Rasulullah was ordered to, whether the believers like it or not.
Okay, so people would say, I think people would say that anything that the Prophet ﷺ does is wahi, right?
Yes.
We believe that. So why is Hudaybiyah specifically different in that regard? Because people want to use, because we say the Quran is an eternal text.
Okay.
Right, it's applicable. We can take lessons. Even I was thinking about this morning, like the verse in Surah At-Tawbah that people say, kill them whenever you find them.
Yeah.
There's context for that. We can still apply it today. I'm sure there's a treaty that gets broken, you make with some kuffar, and they break it.
No one's going to be able to do that right now, but it happens in countries all the time.
People break treaties. Yeah, but so how, that's kind of the argument is I've made, is that the Hudaybiyah treaty is an example of pragmatism that is allowable.
Well,
right?
That's a completely silly argument, because everything in that is leading all the way up to that point is saying, don't take any shortcuts. Don't take any shortcuts. Even the one army that said there was one tribe near Persia who was incredibly powerful. Banu Qurayza was it? I can't remember the name. They were towards the Persian Empire, and the Prophet ﷺ approached them for power. And
that's
they said,
Bani Shayban.
Bani Shayban, right?
Yeah.
And they said, you know what? We'll do everything except attack the Persians.
Yes, that's Banu Shayban.
We'll do everything.
So the Persians used to employ them.
Okay.
Persians used to send them gifts because they used to protect the border so the Arabs wouldn't go into Persia and cause skirmishes and problems. Right? So they actually paid them. Okay. Right? That's how much power they had.
Said, we'll fight the Romans, we'll fight everyone.
We won't fight the Persians.
We won't fight the Persians, and he still wouldn't take that offer. That's the best offer you could get on the table. You can't even dream of that kind of offer, dude. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Hey, if that was the case, he would have obtained power from them and
went to Persia.
Yeah, went to Persia later on, or some other pragmatic way where he could have.
Because if he sides with them, then he's on the side of the Persian Empire, which is a very powerful empire, obviously, right?
I think the main thing is here's the whole embodying thing. If you do something, it has to be based on truth and not falsehood.
Yeah.
Right. And that's my thing. So when going back to Mahi's question, if you ask me if I should do BLM or Hotep, I'm going to go on whatever is truth. And if none of them are, I'll do my own thing. Yes. I don't need any of these groups.
Like Muzzy Buzz.
The truth is what Allah will give you victory in, right? He won't do it if you just go with any other group or I can join. Dude, I can come out tomorrow if I want. I could just come out and be famous tomorrow and just join like LGBT stuff and get a big platform, and then later on turn around and say, surprise, I'm against that stuff. I don't care. I hate all that stuff. Right? I could do that, right? And get a huge following. But is it right? Do people? And there's a wisdom in that, because when you behave that way, people lose trust in you. And when people lose trust in you and they see you're a deceiver and they see that you have a split tongue, your entire effort, the entire goal gets lost.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So wait, that's we're not concluding yet, right? There's another thing. Oh, okay. Sorry, Mort. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that going back to, and that's why I think it's coming down back to the whole issue where this started was with the scholars, right? When they choose to do these things outside of Islam, like politically or socially, they have to take that into account, that you don't just lose your Islamic principles because it's not related to Islam, right? We find core values within Islam. We apply that to even things politically and even socially, right? Yeah. So why are we abandoning those?
I think they would argue that they're making their ijtihad, and I think we'll just have to agree to disagree.
I think in their view, I don't think any of them, I know you didn't say this, Mort, but some people may take from that these scholars are doing what's against Islam. A lot of them feel this is the best thing to do. And I think that obviously has to do with their worldview, which is why I think Sim and Daniel had to have that conversation. And again, they were very respectful. They didn't talk bad about anybody. And they made that very clear. But the other thing I want to talk about, there's a fine point, the fine point that you talked about in capitalism, you and Daniel focused on, right? And what actually happened is that society eventually has to be profit. Let me backtrack. It's said that capitalism, and this is the goal on paper, that it's based on efficiency, right? It's based on making everything efficient monetarily and as far as assets and everything is concerned, right? But if families and people are very close together and that's their support system, they stick together, that's not very efficient on a monetary level. So what people have to do is they have to become so individualistic, right, that they have their own life, they have their own world. No one could tell them what to do, to the point that they all are not dependent on each other anymore. And that's where the social fabric starts ripping apart, right? Because for the sake of efficiency, right? And please don't
put... The path of least resistance is what capitalism is always trying to find.
Yes, the path of least resistance, and being, obviously the result of that is more efficiency, right? So when somebody tells you to do something, and this is how, yes, capitalism is a type of economy, but it's a philosophy of economy and a very strong practice of what we practice as far as our economics is concerned, but the culture that it brings, because every economy is going to bring a culture with it, right? And that culture is that a hyper individualism, and in order to be even more efficient, you have to have secularism. You can't really bring religion into everything, because that's going to have people have certain religious beliefs that are not allowed to delve into certain pleasures and spending. But I loved that point, that how capitalism itself will build individuals to not be dependent on each other, because the dependency of families and being that unit, that strong unit, is not efficient on a capitalistic level.
I don't think that's necessarily true, dude, and I'll tell you why.
Tell me more.
There's things that are if we're comparing American capitalism and the way we've become as a society, that could be argued. Yeah. But there is like ethical capitalism, right? Where you believe, like, for example, like, hey, we're going to use it as an engine, but we're not going to compromise our morals. We're going to regulate. We're going to make sure people don't get taken advantage.
Of course.
And I think that's what Islam needs to embody, right? Muslims need to think that way.
Yeah. So the capitalism would just for clarity for people who are listening to the show. When we're talking about capitalism in the way we're talking about when profit is at the top of your morale. It exceeds all
human life.
Then I agree.
And justify the means. Yeah. But so I'm not saying that capital. Of course, and every philosophy, dude, in any economic philosophy, also there's elements that we may even say that are the same in Islam, and the second is there's a result of that ideology, let's say the capitalist ideology, that's going to give birth to a certain mindset, even though it's not in the writing of the ideology, right? It's just a side effect, right? So what we're talking about, we're talking about the mindset that efficiency is at such a level that, like Sim mentioned, perfect words, profit is much more important than the person itself or the people of humanity.
So the way I look at it, like, is for Muslims, because I don't want Muslims to get confused and be like, oh, Islam is like against capitalism, and it's not. I think
the word is free, the free market
would resemble what we have today. I think if anything resembles what, in a similar way, not entirely, but closer to it, would probably be the Nordic model, where you have a free capital system, but you have a huge social network. You don't let people starve in the street. You don't let people die. You give them health care. You take care of the sick, the poor, the elderly, right? Those are all things that Islam encourages us to and almost mandates upon us to do so, right? So I think people need to just... I understand
the Nordic capitalist model is a great model, at least in the West, but it also has its own limitations that a lot of people aren't happy with, at least...
Right. And what's the main point here, Tim? It's greed, right? Islam is against greed, hoarding and greed, right? In America, in our current capitalist society, we're taught to be hoarders and to be greedy. Right. Take up all the profit you can get, cutthroat, forget about who's next to you, who dies, who starves. It doesn't matter.
But even people who don't
dollar inch per inch.
And even people who don't possess a lot of assets, they still, and people, it's actually like, they have like forums about people hoarding and going, and they're known as like what do they call them, hoardmongers or something? I forgot what it's called. It's like a culture that even people who don't
Hoarders,
have a lot,
hoarders,
you just go to, like, you have to attain as much as you can, build a whole arsenal in your basement, and then eventually just show it off and take pictures of it. And so that's what I'm saying. It's that the ideology that actually shoots out that web and has a side effect, man.
I just want to segue into something.
Last point.
Same topic, just real quickly. I'll be real quick about this. I just was thinking about this while you guys were talking, and I saw this movie on Netflix. It's called the Red Sea Diving School, whatever. It's about the Israelis, whatever. But I saw it, and it was interesting. I didn't know it was about them until I saw it. But it was about Israel taking in the Ethiopian Jews and sneaking them in from Ethiopia to Sudan, and then from Sudan they had like a ship that was parked out there. They smuggled them out. But I was thinking, like, dude, these Israelis had no resources. They made Jews walk from Ethiopia into a Muslim South Sudan where they could have been killed and murdered. And they did, and they smuggled them, I think, 6,000 Ethiopian
I know
Jews.
where this is going, Mort. Go ahead.
No, but what I'm thinking is, like, their thing was no one left behind. Your brothers never left behind. I'm thinking, like,
you left them behind.
Why don't Muslims think that? You know what I mean? They literally would have died. I mean, they risked everything for that. For 6,000 people, not even like a millions of people or 50,000 or 20. For 6,000 people, they did that. They literally put a whole nation in danger. Can you imagine what would have happened if South Sudan found out Israel was conspiring with these smugglers to get them out? That's world war. I mean, that's like international politics level, right? But I feel like that spirit among Muslims is gone, and it made me sad. I'm like, dude, these Yahudis did this. Like, I mean, they're, at this time, this was in the 60s, right, where they were fairly a new country, right? They weren't exactly what they have right now. They had assistance. The Americans helped them, sure. But what I'm saying is they tried to utilize every exhaustible measure to save their people in every way. They never stopped until they exhausted every single attempt. And Muslims have lost that.
Are you recommending that we convert to Judaism?
No, I'm saying, hey, take a
pragmatic method,
man. They got one up on you.
All right, guys, let's wrap this baby up.
Oh man, we just got started.
Thank you all so much for joining us this Mad Mondays. Help us out on patreon.com/the Mad Mamluks. Please, everyone, give a round of applause to our brother Ryan, who helped us out.
I was just gonna say shout out to Ryan.
I'm trying.
Thank you so much for hanging out this late. I don't know if you expected us lasting this long.
I did. I don't know if my wife did.
All right.
He's married.
All right. Thank you all for joining us this week. We'll see you next week.
I gotta give him a nickname.
Oh, why don't you talk about Muzzy Buzz real quick?
Yes.
No. Oh wait, hold on. I gotta give him a nickname first. Can I call you Radio Ryan? Would that work?
Just call me
Radio
Abdul Hakim.
Ryan.
Abdul Hakim. I like that name.
Abdul Hakim. Okay.
Abdul Hakim Quick.
Okay,
like that.
awesome. Okay, well, we'll call you that. I just give everyone a nickname like Sim, and I have a different nickname for Amr. I'll tell you offline because it's not.
Make sure you subscribe to Mort's new channel, Muzzy Buzz, on YouTube, youtube.com.
Duck your head down a little more, bro. They got to see the hand.
Muzzy Buzz.
There you go.
MUZZY BUZZ. It's a channel dedicated to just talking about his personal musings regarding various social events or political happenings around the world.
Yep. So I do it randomly, so make sure you just subscribe. It's on my Twitter, so go to
Give us a 20-second lowdown. What are you about? What is that? What's the point of this?
It's just me to talk about political and social issues and like to my rantings about it, right? I mean, I'm going to bring people on the show and stuff, but mostly it'll be a conversation about my views. I wanted a place where I didn't have to include TMM in that conversation because I don't want to put heat on anybody else, right? I'm very opinionated and I have things, so I think Sim thought it would be cool for me, to have my own little carved out spot. So it's just going to be me talking about certain issues that I feel are important that are related to Muslims right now that's happening, right? And just a quick, I don't want to have long podcasts. I don't want to do a long show, 10 to 20 minutes maximum on small issues. So when I really want to have a serious conversation about real deep issues, obviously I'm going to be on the show here too, doing that like we do right now. But these are just like random moments where I think about something and I feel like I need to get it out. And
from what you were telling me, you don't mind even having a guest that's going to be totally racist towards you or just racist in general. You want to talk to him and want to know what's making him tick, right?
Well, I mean, I'm planning on bringing on people that are completely opposite.
Crazy.
Like I want to bring like non-Muslims. I want to bring like white supremacists. I want to bring I want to bring people that you don't normally see that we wouldn't have a conversation with.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Like right now we live in an echo chamber. We talk to Muslims all the time. It's good to hear the opposite side, even if you don't agree.
Yes.
It's good to hear them because they learn from you and you learn from them. You can see the perspective. So I'm going to try to. That is my plan, to bring on people that you wouldn't normally see on a Muslim show.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you all next week. Assalamu alaikum.